I mean, which brings us into today. So I love bringing Dr. Arash on the Zoom call and educating everyone. And the one that I got yesterday was in the email. I'll bring it up for those that if you haven't seen it. This really just got me excited because, as you guys know, there's certain exercises that I hate. I freaking hate the Tinkerbell jumps, as I call them, when everyone's throwing their arms back. It's not how you do it. It's something about being a strength coach and working with athletes. You never see an athlete do it, but now you see all these influencers and it's spreading like wildfire. And so that's a whole nother topic. But I got this email from ISSA, International Sports and Science Association. There, of course, you go to their website, they say that they're the leading educational provider for all trainers worldwide. And you get an email like this. And so I can be sometimes a little harsh at times, and I sound off, but I think it would be awesome to get a true expert's opinion on this exercise and what's going on, maybe a little deeper with the anatomy, and just kind of teach us a little bit more about what's going on here.
Cool. I like that. So basically, I mean, this seems, they labeled it as a tricep workout, which is the goal of the dip. So the tricep workout, they're focusing on the short head of the tricep because the shoulder is an extension. Now, the intent here is to work out the tricep with minimizing stress on the shoulder. However, we see here that she's in upwards of 90 degrees of shoulder extension while she's trying to work on her tricep. And I don't even know if that's her end range. I'd imagine that she's not going past that. However, the reality is that people don't have 90 degrees of shoulder extension. I mean, when we'll do tests like 40 degrees at most, I go upwards of 70 degrees maybe when I do some passive range of motion, but 90 degrees is pushing it with shoulder extension. So the concern is, do people have 90 degrees of shoulder extension to get into this position? And if people don't have that and they're trying to replicate this, what happens is if they try to get into 90 degrees, they're going to stress the anterior glenohumeral joint significantly because their shoulder can't really get into that position. So the head of the humerus just jams forward to try to create space however it can to get those elbows back up to what seems to be 90 degrees. However, the shoulder is now being stressed on significantly. The other thing too, and we briefly talked about this, Chris, is that her palms are, her knuckles are facing towards her, and that indicates that her shoulders are in a internally rotated position. So the internally rotated position in itself, if you look at the shoulder, I mean, if I'm here and I rotate my shoulder internally, you're going to see my shoulder already translate anteriorly. That's just a coupled motion of the shoulder. If I rotate my shoulder externally like this, my shoulder gets pulled back a little bit. So you're creating a little bit of this internal rotation plus pushing the shoulder into 90 degrees of extension, which is, I mean, maybe that's fine for her, but I'd say a majority of people can't do this time after time again, especially if you want to start loading this now, or maybe you want to create more challenge for yourself and do this when you're fatigued a bit. You are only going to stress the anterior capsule likely more and more over time. Now, I don't want to make that true for every single person because someone may have the adequate range of motion, but I'd say two ways that we can make this a little more safe, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, Chris, is one is we can make it a little more shallow. We can decrease the range of motion. That way the anterior glenohumeral joint / glenohumeral ligaments don't have to be stressed on as much. The other is we can externally rotate the shoulders a little bit. That way we can create more of what we talked about before, just centration of the glenohumeral joint, and we don't create as much of that anterior translation of the head of the humerus just jamming up against those passive structures of the shoulder. So I'd say those two things would make this exercise a lot more effective in terms of targeting the tricep with minimizing risk of shoulder injury.
So that's why I challenge with our interns is I ask them, we always got to ask why. And I'm trying to get better because I can be known as a dick and say this is a dumbass exercise. And I still think it is a dumbass exercise because when you ask the bigger question, girls will look at her and they're going to say, wow, she has a tiny waist, she has a big ass, and she has, toned arms. Therefore, if I do this exercise, I'm going to look like her. And I guarantee you that she didn't get that physique from doing this exercise. So then you ask the bigger question, why are we doing it? I think a lot of people are thinking they can spot reduce and they want to get rid of their bingo arms. When they get bingo, bingo, they got their fat arms back there. and they think that they can get rid of that fat. But in actuality, what would be, I feel, a 10 times better exercise would be a close grip push-up. But then again, you can also screw that up as well. If you don't do it properly and you're not engaging your core and your glutes, you can still get that anterior glenohumeral glide. So I understand when people say it's not the exercise, it's how you do it, and there's no inherently bad exercise. But I like to go out on the limb and stir the bee's nest, and I would actually say that this is a fucking terrible exercise. And because the way that you're saying it, and if you have external rotation and you limit to the range of motion, maybe you're getting 30 degrees of extension. So why not do a push-up? You're going to get your chest, you're going to get more active. Put a band on yourself. Do a clap. I guarantee you, if you could do a plyometric clap push-up, that's going to be significant better for the end goal that you're trying to get versus potentially just jacking up your shoulder by doing this. And then what we usually see is we'll see the girl put her feet on a bench. We start getting some weight on there. And then now you're loading up with a 45 or 2 of them in that end range.
Yeah, I know. I completely agree. In my years of being a PT, strength coach, and even some training before PT school, I have never prescribed this exercise. And I'm usually on the thought of there's no inherent bad exercise, but that in itself shows you how much value in my head this kind of movement brings. And even if we make all these modifications, you bring up a great point, which is, is that even worth it? Is there other ways that we can address this plus many other things without putting the shoulder at risk of irritation? And the answer is yes. And I like that. There's so many different ways that we can address it. So I know you're saying it's like you see this and you want to replicate this, and other people will see this and be like, okay, I want to do this. I want to look like her. The problem is that that's not how she she definitely didn't look like that just doing this tricep workout.
Yeah, right. I think we need to put you on the November ballot because you're a great politician. I love how everything that you do, you're always so great. And I got to work on my my vernacular sometimes, but I always tell people that, can you run a mile with a weight vest on and drink a bottle of whiskey? It's like, sure, you can. It's not smart. Why are you doing it? Is there a better application? I even see a kipping pull-up. That makes more sense to me just because you're doing it for CrossFit, and that's something they're going to test you on. So if it's part of your sport, it's like, yeah, you got to do it. But why are we doing this? Most people are doing it for the fact that they think they're going to get nice arms. But you need to factor in that there is that convenience factor, right? Where you can do it anywhere. But then again, you can do a push-up anywhere. And I think if you really conquer the push-up, I'd be willing to bet that most girls and guys that will do dips like this, they probably can't do a 20 solid push-ups. And if they could, I think that their arms would be in better shape and their stomach and the rest of their body because they would be getting just an overall better value.
Even when I do the dips, which sometimes I do, I still lean so far anteriorly that honestly what it just becomes is a push exercise where I'm creating a shoulder flexion as I push into it. I don't personally like going into too much extension, especially if I'm loading and especially if I'm trying to create changes in my muscle. If I'm doing a stretch, that's maybe one thing. And maybe this would be a good shoulder stretch if she wanted to. But in terms of repeatedly stressing the shoulder and end range shoulder extension over and over again, especially since the anterior shoulder capsule is just such an area that's commonly irritated on people. When you talk about risk versus reward, this is one of those things that doesn't make sense in my mind.
I use this part of our slides. I like this share right here because even when Arnold's doing this, he just looks like he's in pain on the left. But when you do the actual dip, you can see his body position. So if you were to stand him up in that same position, he's maybe at 60, maybe 50 degrees of extension there?
On the right or left?
On the right?
The right, yeah, maybe at most, yeah, because he's anteriorly leaning, yeah, probably.
And so, I mean, you can take an exercise and regress it, make it appropriate. And so there's our 2 cents on the bench dips. Bar dips are okay. Bench dips, maybe not. And again, I always appreciate your time and helping to educate not only interns, but new and inspiring trainers. Make sure to check out the Prehab Guys. We got an awesome app that's going to be coming out soon. And I'm looking forward to just continually spreading awesome knowledge for everyone. So thanks again for the help.